Anthony, y'all on the agenda today?
Well, we don't have public speaking, so how we go.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we will be brought by council.
Okay.
And I have to.
Okay. A lot of you do.
A little bit more than we do. Yeah, I think that.
She just needs to be able to get copies of her service records that disappeared. Okay. Yeah. I think I emailed her contact information to you. Well, no, I emailed her contact information.
Oh, okay.
I'm not seeing the English.
Okay, good, okay.
Is that good?
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah, there's a curtain in the background.
All right. That's fine. Yes. Are you gonna sing the national anthem?
She can do that.
She can sing pretty too.
That boy. I have nothing. That is beautiful. Come on down. Come on down.
You're going well with it.
You had any idea what my day looked
I only do it for you, man.
Oh, you say, I know that one.
Well, you may not be here, but yours, one of us will be.
Your district doing?
I'll make sure you.
Good evening, everyone. That wasn't much of a response. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
That's better. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of Sumter County Council for Tuesday, August 10th. Ms. V, would you please give us an indication? May we all stand and remain standing for the pledge.
Let us pray. Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we do thank you for allowing us to come to the table again to discuss the business that you've placed before us. We invite your presence and ask that you help us to make the decisions that are pleasing in your sight. We ask your blessings upon everyone under the sound of my voice. We do acknowledge that you are the one in whom we live and move and have our being, and that we cannot do anything without you. And we acknowledge that you will give us the mind and the heart to make decisions according to your will. These and all blessings we thank and ask in your name. Amen.
The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by my friend, veteran Gwen Cofield, who happens to reside in Councilman Washington's district. Mr. Washington, please.
Good afternoon, welcome to council. Retired U.S. Force veteran Gwendolyn Cofield served our country for 21 years. Show Air Force Base was her last duty station, and she liked Sumter so much that she decided to make this beautiful county her home. Thank you for that. She has one son, Sean, and a fur baby named Shizu. She enjoys traveling, singing, church, and a good game of pinochle. She is a member of the American Legion Post 202, and she currently lives in the County Council District 1. That would be my district. Thank you for your service. Ms. Cofield, and please come lead us.
Good evening, everyone. Please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Perry, which way do you want the shot? This way? Thank you, sir.
Ms. Blanding, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Edens and a second by Mr. Baker to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? May I have a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting for Tuesday, July 27th? So moved.
Second. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Baton and a second by Mr. Baker to approve the minutes from our regular meeting of Tuesday, July 27th. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Item number 6, land use matters, RZ 2114. Ms. Rudolph.
Good evening.
Good evening.
RC 2114 is a request at 614 Fluoride Street being brought forward by J. Davis as the authorized agent for the property owner. This request is to rezone approximately 0.6 acres of property from residential 9 to light industrial warehouse. This is the property in question. It is on Fluoride Street, but it directly abuts the Sumter Utilities property, which is actually spread out over the intervening 3 properties that you see to the south and just to the east. The property itself is currently vacant. It's a wooded lot, and it has been for quite some time. When we look at rezoning requests, we look at what the comprehensive land use plan designation says, and in this instance, the comp plan designates this as the suburban development planning area. Our primary goal of this planning area is really to scrutinize and manage existing development patterns, foster intentional mixed-use development, and identify new commercial and industrial locations. This particular property is positioned in such a way that it would allow Sumter Utilities to correct some setback issues that they have because they are a grandfathered non-conforming site of record, while giving them some space to kind of gain and control some accesses that they already have to the site. So as I said, this is a request to rezone it to light industrial warehouse. It is immediately south of the intersection of Jefferson Road on Fluoride Street. Fluoride Street is actually a small residential enclave, but the residential development's on the north side of the street, not on the south side. And so although it is part of that residential development, because of its position and the existing development around it with Sumter Utilities, it really does lend itself to being added to that tract. This is what the site looks like today. It's pretty much just maintained by being mowed. It's not being used for anything. As you can see in this picture, that's actually the Sumter Utilities site, and you can see just the edge of water. That's actually one of their stormwater detention areas. So they actually do potentially have a negative impact on this tract if it stays outside of their tract, because that's one of their holding areas for their property. It's actually about a 3 to 4 foot change in grade, depending on where you're at, between their properties that front on Pike and Fluoride Street. So they're wanting to kind of add this into it to control some of those mitigating impacts. This is the lot right next door to it. Although it does have a house on it, it's dilapidated and it's uninhabitable at this particular moment. So overall, Planning Commission does recommend approval of this request. Their intent to combine it with their existing property will actually bring some of their development nonconformities into compliance. And generally, the encroachment of an industrial district into this primarily residential area wouldn't normally be supported, but given the existing pattern of development around it, we do find that this is an appropriate request. I'm happy to answer your questions that you may have.
Move approval first reading.
Second.
One question, General. Can you go back to the map? I mean, it looks like it fronts the others. There you go. So,
That road right of way has never actually been built.
okay. Because I was wondering if they were going to be able to access that all with trucks.
If you look at the aerial imagery,
It doesn't exist, so that's right there.
yeah, they actually have trucks parked on top of it.
Any other questions of Ms. Rubin? We have a motion by Mr. Byrd, second by Mr. Baker to have first reading on RZ 2114. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of first reading for RZ 21-14, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? First reading for RZ 2114 is approved. OA 2104, ordinance amendment.
This request is actually being brought forward by planning staff to address an issue that came up recently with an existing non-conforming cell tower that's reached the end of its useful life and it needs to be replaced. And it addresses the minimum setback requirements for communication towers and antennas, particularly in residential zoning districts. If this is approved, it would amend Article 5, Section 5BF to allow engineered fall zones for towers in residential zoning districts. And we're also taking some duplicative and confusing language out of the cell tower section of the regulations. It creates this weird if-then loop that needs to be corrected. We have initiated this because there is a tower in the Cherryville area fronting on St. Paul's Church Road that currently is about 90 feet tall and it sits about 80 feet from the road, which is not the full height of its setback. And they can't get any additional land to keep that tower in operation while they build a new tower, which is going to end up being closer to the road. And they wanted to be able to use an engineered fall zone, but the Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the ability under our current regulations to do that. And so right now, the way that the ordinance is written in residential zoning districts, the fall zone for a tower is equal to the height of the tower, whether it's engineered that way or not, which means that however tall that tower is how far it has to be from all adjacent property lines. When the ordinance was originally written, the technology was not in place to engineer those structures to fall in a particular way or to have faulty points where they would fall in a particular way, and that exists now. We did update this in the county ordinance for commercial zoning districts probably around 5 years ago, but we didn't touch the residential districts at the time. But we are finding that as the need for cell coverage has increased because almost nobody has home phones anymore, the number of towers that we're going to see that are going to need to go up for in-structure coverage is going to increase. We see this potentially happening other places. So in particular, this is the language that you see on your screen in yellow would be what we add to the ordinance, particularly for residential zoning districts, which sets the setback to the height of the tower or the tower's fall zone. You can have the fall zone determined by an engineer licensed in the state of South Carolina. And so if the setback district in the zoning district is 50 feet, but their fall zone is 60 feet, then it would have a 60-foot setback. If the zoning district has a 50-foot setback, but the fall zone on the structure is 45 feet, then we can work with that. So it puts us in a position where we've got some wiggle room where we're not looking at a 100-foot tower trying to make it meet a 100-foot setback when they can't get any additional land. We also will remove this section of the ordinance which talks about being able to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for appeals on things, but the ordinance also in another section already says that you can't go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to ask for variances, specifically for cellular towers. So we take this section out, it clarifies that issue. Planning Commission does recommend approval of this request. We do believe that this amendment gives us additional flexibility to address communication needs as they move forward in the community. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Move approval first reading.
Second. Quick question. So they're designing these towers to where they're 100 feet tall. They're going to pretty much collapse and not fall 100 feet out that way. Is that what you're saying? They've come up with that
They can, for monopole towers, certain types of towers can't have an engineered fault zone because for structural reasons they just won't. But there are certain types of cellular communication towers where they can design a fault in the tower that if it's going to strain from stress from wind load or from snow or ice, and more often than not these towers fail from snow and ice, not wind, that it'll break in a specific spot so they can project what that fault zone is going to be, as opposed to assuming that it's just going to fall like a giant tree.
Any other questions of Ms. Rubin? We have a motion by Mr. Byrd and a second by Mr. Edens to approve first reading for ordinance amendment 2104. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? First reading for ordinance amendment 2104 is approved. Thank you, Ms. Rubin.
My pleasure.
Under new business, resolution 2106, Mr. Mixon.
Mr. Chair, council members, good evening. Resolution 2106, and I'll read the caption quickly. A resolution to express Suffolk County Council's request that the South Carolina General Assembly take the necessary actions to continue to allow local governments to collect user fees that fund critical needs such as public safety and infrastructure. The reason why we're asking for this resolution, many counties across the state of South Carolina are now in the process of doing this, and the caption pretty much says it all. But the reason why we need this is on June 30th, 2021, the last day of our previous budget cycle, one day before our new budget actually went into effect, the South Carolina Supreme Court in the Burns versus Greenville County ruled that Greenville's road user fee was unlawful. While we, the counties, don't agree with the ruling, the fix or the correction is at the South Carolina General Assembly level. Thus, the resolution to the General Assembly. Based on conversation with some of our local delegation members, there seems to be an interest on their part to propose a corrective solution to the problem, likely a language change. Unfortunately, this cannot occur until next session, which begins next January. We, along with many other counties in our state, would like to formalize our request to the General Assembly by providing a publicly voted on resolution stating our position and request for their support to correct this language to allow local level fees to provide a specific service to our citizens. Currently, Sumter County has 4 such fees that may be affected. The road user, of course, being the one that's been in discussion in Greenville, has currently we generate about $2.6 million in revenue in the road user fee. There's a question of whether or not $15 ever would be legal versus the $30 that we have in place to determine. We have a solid waste fee of $2.4 million, stormwater fee at $670,000, and an information technology fee which generates $268,000 for a total of just over $5.9 million impact. That would be almost 19 mills of additional tax if we were to have to convert the fee structure to a millage structure. So the question before council tonight, of course, is to authorize this resolution notifying our General Assembly members, and particularly our delegation, our support for some type of corrective action. That's what I said.
Chairman, I move approval of the resolution.
I second.
We have a motion by Mr. Edens and a second by Ms. McGaney to approve resolution number 2106. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Nixon, now that we know that this might get a reading, the Supreme Court have already made their decision. We're going to continue to collect this money. Is there any plans to put this money in a separate fund in case we have to repay it?
Yes, sir. We are limiting our expenses at the current time, holding back on some of our road user projects in anticipation that we may have to do something in the future.
Thank you. That's all.
And Mr. Chair, just want to also, as appropriate, refer this to the South Carolina Coalition to put that as one of their items to include in their meetings this fall. Because I'm sure there are other counties that have this concern as well. And we would like to be able to go on record as asking them to consider that in their discussions. And that's the county council coalitions in the SCAC.
Any other discussion? As I said, we have a motion by Mr. Edens and a second by Ms. McGaney to approve resolution number 2106. Hearing no further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Resolution 2106 is approved. Resolution number 2107, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, I was asked to put together a resolution urging citizens of Sumter County to wear face masks in certain locations and times. And this looks a lot like the ordinance, the resolution that was passed last July. When you look at the substance of it, of course, the whereas clauses at the beginning explain the reasons for doing it again at this time. It's because of the Delta variant and the increase. I think Ms. Blanding has available a couple of graphs that Ms. Rubin was able to help me obtain from the DHEC website that show the trend in COVID cases. Anyway, you have a bar graph there that shows, there we go. In the tall spikes, sort of in the middle of the sheet, show January, February timeframe, and then on the far right side, you have the current trend going up. And then the next slide shows the cumulative effect or the total cases accumulation. Of course, that graph will always go up because it can only go up as more cases come on. But you see the tail of that trending up higher after having leveled off for a period of time. So the idea is to encourage our citizens to wear masks in certain kinds of places. So with that, take any questions.
Any questions, Brian?
Yeah, one question, could we urge them to take the shot in this?
Well, that was not included, but
Okay.
we could do a resolution.
I mean, this is not a mandate, we're just encouraging people to wear masks.
You could amend the resolution if you choose.
You want to take the shots too? But anyway, council wants to, I'd be willing to put that in there also.
Attorney Brian, I know that school started up, and I saw pictures on the front page of the item of students going to the new school that opened up the STEM school. And some of the students in there were wearing masks and some were not. And I noticed this the other day, Mayor Steve Benjamin, Mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, said that he was going to make it mandatory that masks be worn in elementary schools as well as middle schools because these students are too young to get a vaccination and high rate of spread of Delta virus can happen. Have we thought about that in any way that we might want to do something similar to that, or we going to just roll the dice and hope that nothing happened to these young kids? Mayor Benjamin referred to them as babies, and that we should do everything we can to protect our babies. Have we ever thought of that? Is there any plan on that?
I was asked to write a resolution, and that's what I thought to do.
And that's just to urge everyone just to wear a mask.
Yes.
And, okay. Let me ask you, Chairman McCain, have you thought about the idea in what Mayor Benjamin is doing in Richland County as far as schools? Have you thought about along those lines and trying to get all of the kids in elementary school as well as middle school to wear masks?
I have thought about it, but our governor has made an executive order stating that local governments cannot. Now, I know Mayor Benjamin is going against that, and it's gonna have to be litigated. So that's as far as I thought.
So what you will do is wait until it's litigated and see what the results will be. And if the mayor wins, then will we pass a mask mandate for our kids in school to protect our babies?
Mr. Bacon, that will be up to council.
I know that, and that's why I'm saying we will have to have council to approve it, but you can bring it up.
You can bring it up as well, Mr. Bacon.
Okay, that's well good. Thank you very much, and I'll make sure that I do that. So I'll just wait for the litigation to happen. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Anyone, I have a motion to approve resolution number 2107, urging face coverings, not mandating, but urging.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Ms. McCain. Do I have a second?
Second.
And we have a second discussion? We have a motion by Mr. McGaney and a second by Mr. Baker. All in favor of approving resolution 2107, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Resolution 2107 is approved 6-1.
Mr. Chairman, before you go to new business, I'd like to have a moment, please. First, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the County Administrator for your help on this matter, and I'll get to that in just a second. But the issue I want to raise as a part of new business includes the decaying and pothole-ridden roads in the county's district, particularly in rural areas like mine, and the deferred maintenance on these roads and lack of road improvements have resulted in severe road deterioration, especially in rural areas. And nationally, the cost of that is about $3 billion a year. And typical pothole damage to automobiles include tire puncture, wheel rim damage, premature wear on shocks, suspension damage, steering system damage, exhaust system damage, engine damage, and so on. And in District 1, which I represent, there are 51 miles of dirt roads in the district. And the citizens who pay taxes have roads. So all the people who pay taxes in the county should have roads. We have a lot of private roads in the county, and the majority of them are properties that have been handed down from family members. And we want those people here, so we have to take care of them. Sumter County has a policy to not address private roads, although, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to thank you and the county administrator for agreeing to begin addressing some of those roads if in fact the community would pay for the materials, because council's policy is not to address private roads. So I thank you for that. And you guys have gone as far as you could go without council taking some action. But I think we're at a unique place and in a unique time when council has the opportunity to do some good. And as you have all heard me say over a period of time, that I am about basic services. And I think we may be in a position to help some of these people. And Mr. Mixon, you've been on some of these roads with me, private roads where 30, 40 families live. Property has been handed down to them. They didn't necessarily choose to go to these areas. The property has been handed down, and for whatever reason, the road has not been able to be accepted as a county road or a state road. They house seniors and children, and in a lot of these areas, they have emergencies that come up, and vehicles cannot access these roads because they are horrible. And so what I'd like to do is ask this council to have a conversation about using a one-time pot of money to address the private roads that house a number of these. These citizens certainly deserve that basic service, and we have a lot of those roads in the district. And Mr. Chairman, what I would like to do is have the ability to work with staff to come up with some sort of criteria, some sort of cap to address this issue, and some standards that will allow us to go into a lot of these areas and do a one-time money. We identify the pot to help these people. I know you and I certainly don't want an emergency scenario to come up and we can't get to children or to seniors. In fact, there was an incident last weekend in my district where there was a fire at a residence, but the fire truck could not get in because of the road condition. And the sheriff had to bring the firemen in by car because they could not get the truck in. And these kinds of things happen often. So it's something that we can do and provide to our people as a basic service, and it's something that we ought to do. And I want to ask council to get prepared to consider that. And Mr. Chairman, I would like the authority to work with staff on creating a criteria for that, a pot of money for that, and to come back to council with a possible plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Washington. I'm sure that county administrator is amenable to you meeting with them.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, happy to do so. I think probably the proper format in the council would be to send that to a public works committee. I think Mr. Washington might be on that committee, if I'm not mistaken. But, if not, either way, but that would probably be the best route. I would caution council based on legal advice that we do have some legal issues in regards to private roads that we possibly need to pursue and make sure we don't fall foul with that. So a lot of discussion, and we're certainly open to it and certainly understand the need in any way we can address it. We'll work toward that.
We do a lot for them around. And then, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just have one other issue, and that is we had some conversation some weeks ago, and I've been talking to the county administrator about it and gave him a document earlier. We talked about 501c3s and churches and religious organizations who have been providing services in the county during COVID to essential citizens, and identifying a pot of money that we would allow them to apply for grants with. And at that time, the county administrator, it was already on his agenda, and he indicated that he would be coming back to council for some guidance on that, which I appreciate. And so in that spirit, I have developed an application packet that we can adjust, amend, look at, discuss, that might help us get down the road a little bit with that. And again, have the leeway to work with staff on that, bring council something back to consider. And obviously it would have a cap on what we're willing to do. And it would have criteria. Criteria is established in the application packet that I developed. I'll give it to staff, and staff can make copies and send around the council members, and they're welcome to make amendments or suggestions or changes. I have no pride of authorship, but it's certainly something that we should do and can do to help our folks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my comments.
In my conversations with the administrator, he and staff are in the process of doing exactly what you're talking about. And I think that Mr. Mixon has plans to come to us at our next meeting with some suggestions. So that'll tie right into what you're asking for.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And real quick, Mr. Edens, I just wanted to just kind of piggyback on that. We are on the same page with that, and I've spoken to our administrator as well. So, and I'm aware that he's already working on it as well. Thank you.
Ms. Edens.
Just to go back to the private road situation and to give attorney and administrator something, maybe consider anyway. I don't know where we get funding, and especially if these fees situation doesn't come through. But I had thought about if there was a way to maybe come up with some money, just to call it like some grant money, set aside specifically for this. And then you've got a road with residents on it, and you mentioned maybe they would be willing to buy the materials or whatever. But to circumvent the county doing the work, then if we could, different groups of road would apply for grant, and then we would give them the grant money, let them contract it out rather than county going on the property to do it.
Certainly not intending to speak for our attorney, but I believe that's still going to fall into that category of using public funds for private purposes. But again, we're conversating conversation, and again, if we can figure out a way to work this and be on solid ground, we're certainly want to do that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, it's sort of, the way I see it, it's sort of like, say for instance, if Allen University holds a major event in Columbia, private entity, private funding, but guess what's gonna happen? When people come in town for that event, they're going to hotels, they're going to restaurants, they're going to the zoo, they're going to the museum. They are spending money in that city. That is economic development. And our legal folks are smart enough to make a tie-in with that to justify doing that service. It is a basic service that we ought to be doing. We don't do enough basic services, and government has to get back to providing basic services for people. I truly believe that. And that's not a Democrat or Republican issue, it is a people issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Okay, next item on the agenda. Under old business, ordinance number 21-957, third reading, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chairman, no changes since second reading.
Move for approval. Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Baker, seconded by Mr. Byrd, that we have third reading on ordinance 21-957. Any discussion? Anyone all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Next item is committee reports, Public Safety Committee meeting, Mr. Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the sheriff for bringing an issue before us that involves the safety of the community and back in District 1, which is the district that I have been, I'm just honored to serve. And without going into too much detail, because we did have executive session so we could address the issue, I'll just identify it as a major safety issue for the community that the sheriff is absolutely on top of. We've taken some limited action tonight and expect to take more action on that issue in the future. And in the near future, we'll be able to talk in a little bit more detail about the issue, where we are, and the steps that have been taken. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have a motion and a second from the committee, Mr. Washington, so you need to bring that forward.
So the committee passed out the motion to take action unanimously, which brings the issue before council.
Okay, the Public Safety Committee has a motion, a recommendation, with a motion and a second from the Sheriff's Office to take action on the matter for the safety and well-being of the citizens of Sumter County. Any discussion? All in favor of carrying the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is passed. Sheriff Dennis still here? Okay. All right. Land Use Committee meeting, Mr. Edens.
Land Use Committee met and we briefly discussed developing properties in the military protection zone. Ms. Rudman was there and briefed us on a couple of options maybe. We were expecting a presentation from the private developer, but he didn't make it, but he didn't get notified. But anyway, we're going to reschedule for another committee meeting at our next meeting to discuss the same item. No action is taken.
Thank you, Mr. Edens. Come now to report from council members on other meetings, trainings, and or conferences. Hearing none, monthly reports, Mrs. Blandon.
Council members, in your package, you'll have an invitation to Nova Molecular, and they're having a groundbreaking on Thursday, August the 12th at 3 o'clock at 1135 Racetrack Road. Council members, we ask you if you could to please attend this economic development project. groundbreaking. Also, we may need input from someone, whether we're going to have the Sumter County Airport Showcase and South Carolina Avionics Services. We were unable to have the ribbon cutting for the animal shelter due to COVID issues. And we'll need to know whether we're going to continue to have this, and we have to have an answer by August the 11th, which is tomorrow. Additionally, we have the Public Works Department monthly report in your packet. Sorry about that one. Where if you see this in your packet, which you should not, yeah, you should see this one coming up. Hold on just a second. My fingers stop working. Is the Mechanicsville United Methodist Church historical marker unveiling, and I believe this may be in Mrs. Gaines' district. And they'd like to have all of the council members there, but just in case all cannot come, please, Mrs. McGaney, if you can. If you have this still reviewed networking, we're going to get some more information on that for you. And I think that was the last one. Yes, sir. But please remember on the 12th, which is the November lecture.
Thank you, Ms. Blandy. Mr. Nixon, County Administrator's report.
Mr. Chair, just quickly, I just asked, again, council in regards to this, airport ribbon cutting. If you have a strong opinion on that, please let us know. We obviously are concerned, with gatherings of any size, but one of the things we do recognize is this is outdoors in a hangar. We believe that it will be adequate space for folks to spread out. And I do know that the aviation group is excited about this event, if you can still hold it. But again, if you have a strong opinion about it, please let us know. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Come now to the public comment section of our agenda. Anyone in the public wishing to address council, please come to the podium. Please say your name for the record. You're limited to 3 minutes, and please address all comments through the chairman. I now declare the public comment section open. Anyone wishing to speak to council, please proceed to the microphone. Okay, seeing none.
Mr. Chair, second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn.